What is that sound that always fills my ears? Is it the sound of rain, the sound of a waterfall, or it could be a radio static? If not, I want it to be the sound of blood flowing through my body. I want it to be the sound of the blood circulating through me, telling me that I'm still alive.
朝なのか。
The light entering through a crack in the curtain was faint, but it was at least told him that dawn had broken. Kinzo, still in the position he'd been when he woke up, still sitting in a chair and looking at the ceiling, felt the blood slowly travel through his body. Judging by the clock, it was early morning, 6 o'clock on the dot. No matter how tired he was, no matter how deeply he slept, he always woke up at exactly the same time, as though he had measured it with an hourglass. He didn't think of it as something to boast about, but he told himself that as long as he could still manage this, his health couldn't be that bad.
朝を迎えたということは、どうやら最初の生贄は逃れたということらしい。ルーレットの目が幸運だったのか、我が努力の賜物なのか。区別のつかぬところがなんとももどかしいが、それは言うまい。
Kinzo was struck by a faint desire to see beyond the study door. After all, he might find the traces of someone's vain struggle to break through the door. A sign that someone had tried to select him as one of the first 6 sacrifices.
人間とは安っぽい生き物だな。人事を尽くして天命を待ちながら幸運を得られた時にはそれが単なる幸運ではなく己の技量によるものだったとうぬぼれたくもなる。
That is why he wanted to check whether there was a wretched mark on the door. The very desire was human. And that was why Kinzo did not check. He often rejected desires that came to him because he was human. By doing that, he could be immersed in a feeling of sufficiency, as though he himself had become a being that surpassed humans. He recognized human desires for what they were and guarded against them. Things that a human would want to do, he resisted. The eccentric and rebellious nature had surely given him a rare genius, making it possible for him to succeed in his exploits as he revived the Ushiyamaya family in a single generation.
さて、ベアトリーチェ、お前が取った6つの駒は何なのか。そして次なる手はどう来るのか。楽しませてもらうぞ。私の守りは完璧だ。前回のような無様はさらさぬぞ。
One moment. Okay, 6 at the first, however, there was 7 in the chapel. Well, technically 8 if we count Beatrice, but I don't. Because she's clearly not real. We'll just have to see who survived then. The servants woke up early. They had to open the curtains, prepare breakfast, and complete various tasks to welcome the guests to a new day. Goda was the most enthusiastic. During the family conference, he had been told to concentrate his efforts especially on cooking, and he'd been specifically exempted from several tasks that servants normally must do. Goda, who was a show-off, seemed to be feeling particularly superior because of that. He let Genji and the rest prepare the mansion and worked on making breakfast in the kitchen. Genji split the work between Shannon and Canon, and they carried out various tasks. Shannon headed to the dining room and knocked. Last year, the family conference had continued into the early hours of the morning. It wouldn't have been odd if this year's conference had done the same. Considering the possibility they were still having a discussion inside, she knocked. But there was no response, so she opened the door and said good morning. But it's empty.
おはようございます。いらっしゃいませんか?
The room was cold and the conference seemed to have ended a long time before. There was a tea set in the middle of the table which they'd probably been drinking, arranged in a way that to make it easy to clean up. Cleaning up the tea was a servant's job. If the family members were extra generous and cleaned it up themselves, the servants would lose face. So it was truly a pleasant act of kindness for a family to do only this much. As she approached the table to clean it, she noticed something like a memo that had been left near the utensils and cups. Since it was right next to a tea set, Shannon picked it up naturally, thinking it was a memo for a servant doing the cleaning. It's the letter from Rosa, isn't it? Written there was not a request, nor was it thanks for preparing the tea. There was just a single word. Shannon looked at it blankly and read it out loud.
礼拝堂。
A sound kept repeating over and over. Normally that sound had been too trivial to be worth caring about. If only I could stop hearing it soon, I could go back and sleep right away, she thought vaguely. But no matter how much time has passed, the sound did not end. It repeated over and over. Ah, shut up. Who is it? Banging on the door this whole time. As soon as she realized that, she woke up. Someone was knocking. Then she noticed that it wasn't a knock, but a voice as well.
Rosa-sama. Rosa-sama.
Okay, so Rosa's the killer
おはようございます。
for the first act.
今行きます。
It had been Genji's voice. Looking at the clock, it wasn't even 7 yet. It was clearly too early to wake the guests. Did something happen that was bad enough to cause this? She felt her sleepiness increasingly fade thanks to this premonition of misfortune. Though Genji was a servant, Rosa had known him since her childhood days, so even though she was slightly defenseless in her pajamas, she opened the door, cracked, and answered.
おはようございます。早朝から申し訳ございません。
何かあったの？
はい。実は礼拝堂に。
Genji whispered something into Rosa's ear. For a second it seemed Rosa couldn't understand what she'd been told. After hearing it repeated several times, she realized that apparently something strange had happened. Rosa closed the door for a second, changed her clothes quickly, and followed Genji towards the mansion. The chapel requires some explanation. It wasn't in the mansion, but in a groove behind it, a short walk distance away. It had been built at the same time as the mansion, so though its walls had been repaired many times, making it look new from the outside, it was a very old building. Rosa dashed through the rain along with Genji. Like the previous night, the rain was falling in earnest. Eventually the chapel came into sight beyond a thin groove. Just looking at it from the outside seemed to place a dazzling beauty, where a pair of young lovers might want to get married. Cough, cough. However, Kinzo apparently viewed it as a very sacred place, so Rosa and her siblings had been given strict instructions not to approach it unnecessarily. Even though they had all grown up now, approaching the chapel for any reason would still make them feel guilty, and also afraid as if their father might get angry and hit them in the face. The servant silhouettes could be seen in front of the chapel's entrance. Goda, Shannon, and Canon, which meant that all the servants in the morning shift had gathered. A short while ago, Genji had spoken to Rosa, telling her what the situation was. However, without laying her eyes on it directly, she wouldn't have been able to understand. It was probably the same for all the servants gathered here as well. Without seeing it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have been able to understand what was going on. The door to the entrance of the chapel was something very large, drawn in a creepy, stringy paint that made it one think of blood. Something like a creepy magic circle.
何よこれいつ書かれたの？
The servants looked at each other. Goda was the first to open his mouth.
申し訳ございません。普段はここへは立ち入りませんもので、いつ書かれたのかはわかりません。
じゃあ 最初に見つけたのは誰？はい。食堂へお茶の道具の片付けに行きましたら、礼拝堂と書かれたメモがあったもので。
Shannon held up a memo in a shaking hand.
誰の字？兄さんや姉さんの字ではないわね。それであなたはここへ来てこれを見つけたのね。はい。
ローザ様、これを。
何？ハッピーハロウィン for
Maria. Callum pointed to a single line of English written below the creepy magic circle. Until it had been pointed out to her, she thought it was just another part of the magic circle. Then the following words were written in English. Happy Halloween for Maria. Happy Halloween for Maria. This creepy magic circle was for Maria. Happy Halloween. Yesterday only one person said Happy Halloween to Maria. The key phrase matched. It was the Golden Witch Beatrice.
Maria は？あの子、いとこたちと一緒に寝てるはずよね。確認した？
申し訳ございません。マリア様のお名前が書かれていたことには今気づきましたもので、まだ確認しておりません。至急。
何やってんのよ。私はマリアの様子を見てきます。それからクラウス兄さんたちにも知らせて、以後の対応の指示を受けて。
After saying that much, Rose finally noticed something was odd. Her and the rank in the family conference was the lowest of the 4 siblings. Why had she be the only one called during this abnormal situation like this, when the other siblings hadn't been? Even if Maria's name had popped up, Genji just said it. Could it be...
はい。旦那様にご連絡申し上げようとしたのですが、お姿が見当たらず。
奥様もお部屋におられません。シーツの様子からすると、昨夜はベッドに戻られていないのかもしれません。
Rosa felt something creepy crawling slowly up her back.
礼拝堂の中は確認した？
いえ、まだです。
It doesn't actually have to be Rosa the killer if we say one of the victims did it like we did last time.
確認しようとしたのですが。
実は礼拝堂の鍵は特別で、マスターキーに対応しておりません。一本だけある鍵でしか開けられないのですが、その鍵がキーボックスから紛失しているのです。
God, it's a locked room mystery again. She didn't want to get close to the door of the creepy magic circle if she could. Rosa readied herself and approached, then tried pushing and pulling the knob. There's a window! There's a window inside the chapel, like stained glass. Just smash that, it's on back. As she felt all the resistance of the stone lock.
入れる窓などがないか探してはみたのですが。
Okay, but there's a massive stained glass window.
もし中を確認するのでしたら、窓を破らなければならないかと思います。
Fair point.
いかがいたしましょ
そんな許可、私に出せるわけがないわ。お父様の大切な礼拝堂なのよ。そんなこと。
At the time, the events of the previous day swirled around in the back of Rosa's mind. That's right. When I met the witch in the rose garden, didn't she hand Mario an envelope? Yeah, there's no mistake. She did hand it over. When Mario tried to open it, the witch told her not to do it yet, and then she surely said, "The time to open that will come soon." Rosa was sure. There could be no mistake. The envelope Mario had received was... After dashing back to the guest house, Rosa approached her cousin's room while hiding her footsteps, softly opened the door and peered inside. From the inside she could hear the healthy snores typical of young people. There were 4 children, and Mario was there, sleeping soundly. After breathing a sigh of relief, she entered the room with quiet footsteps. She was after Mario's handbag, which was resting on the sofa. Mario always liked carrying her treasures around with her. She was probably emulating how her mother always carried her makeup with her. Of course, she was just imitating her mother, so everything on the inside was junk. In Mario's case, it was full of small, creepy occult items, notebooks describing things of that nature, and so on. Rosa had never been happy to see her daughter walking around with things like that, which weren't girlish at all. However, trying to force Mario to stop had resulted in a big fight, so she decided to leave it be. A western envelope with the crest of a golden eagle. When she took it out of the bag, she realized there was a heavy, vaguely cylindrical object inside. It's the key. She could tell it by feeling its weight. There was no doubt. This was a key. Oh, that's the envelope hasn't been opened yet, meaning that nobody had access to the key before when they got handed the letter. So it was like a massive gap of time where nobody could have gotten in, and everyone confirmed everyone was outside. However, what if the door had an auto lock and was just open? After turning around and checking Mario still sound asleep, Rosa tore the envelope and the contents spilled out in her palm. There was a key with an old intricate design. Rosa gripped the key and dashed out. Battler seemed to have noticed that sound. After grumbling and turning over in his sleep, he started snoring again. So if a chapel has a latch, it's very easy to explain. We just put a door stopper on it.
この鍵、ひょっとして礼拝堂の鍵ということは。
これをどこで。はい、これが礼拝堂の鍵です。
Rosa approached the creepy magic circle once again and put the key inside the keyhole. There was a strong resistance, but after it rested for a short while, it stopped resisting with a clunk. Then, after squeaking with a noise that hurt one's ears, it slowly began to open.
誰かいるの？
Her voice reverberated through the massive room. Of course, there was no answer. The chapel had a high ceiling and the air was cold. And even on this rainy, unsettling day, it felt sacred for some reason. The servants timidly followed after Rosa.
ローザ様、あれを。
Canon noticed immediately and pointed. Over there was an altar. A place that would normally have a pastor preaching of the God of love. There was a table that shouldn't have been there. At first it looked like a dining table. There were actually gorgeous plates and utensils placed there, making it look like a child's birthday party or something. Upon closer inspection, the surrounding area had been decorated with pumpkins and black and orange ribbons. There were probably Halloween decorations. There were people seated at the table, 3 of each side facing each other seated in chairs. They could recognize her at a glance. Kraus, his wife, Eva, her husband, Rudolph and his wife. But if you wanted to be sure, you'd still have to get closer and check, because they seemed almost like dolls. Rosa and the rest had opened the door, entered it all at once with the sound of many footsteps and called out, asking if anyone was there. And yet there'd been no reaction. Even if Rosa and the rest had assumed they were being ignored, you'd still expect there to be some kind of reaction. And there hadn't even been that. So at first it felt like someone had set down some dolls that greatly resembled those people. But now it wasn't just Rosa. Shannon and Canon and even Goda. They were all fighting frantically with the creepy emotion that grasped at their hearts.
兄さん、Aさん。
As she walked towards the altar, she called out again. There was still no reaction. Yes, by now Rosa was sure of it. She was sure that there wasn't dolls, but people themselves. Wait, hang on a second. Well, I have to check. Remember who died the previous time of the first round, because it was Kraus. There's a couple servants too. Yeah, it's not important. But of the adults who survived, it was Eva, Hideyoshi, and Natsui, and now the only adult who survived it's Rosa. Those 6 are dead. But in the first eye, it was supposed to be Kraus, Natsui, Rude. So these two are supposed to survive for the love thing. But now that they've got Shannon and George, they can kill them off. And Goda also died because why not? And who else? Yes, by now Rose was sure of it. She was sure that it wasn't dolls, but these were people themselves.
これは
They grew close enough to see what lay at that table. Still, it looked like an adorable banquet reminiscent of a children's birthday party. Plates piled up with sweets, cute pictures with drinks, all kinds of pumpkin-shaped ornaments. They were all decorated in a Halloween style. And while this probably wasn't the best time thinking of it, Mario would surely have been delighted to see all of this. That was the state of the table they sat at in front of, apparently asleep. There was an eerie scene as though a small, fun-looking Halloween party had been stopped in time.
兄さんたち寝てるの？
Sure, let's go with sleeping. When she approached even closer to them, she realized there were snacks scattered all over the floor. Candies, cookies, soda and chocolates, all with heavily fantasy-themed packing. They're all scattered across the carpet, covered with blackberry and cranberry jam. Rose the rest finally realized what the situation was. It was a Halloween party, a banquet for those not of this world. Kraus, Natsui, Eva, Hideyoshi, Rudolph, and Kiri were seated in chairs apparently asleep, but all dead. How can you tell they were all dead and not simply sleeping? That was because they'd been vertically sliced open, from their chests to their stomachs. The 6 of them had sat down at the Halloween party before having their stomachs sliced open and killing them. The jam covering the floor must have been what overflowed from their stomachs once they'd stuffed themselves completely, right? No. The contents of the stomachs had been scattered all over the floor. And that wasn't all. Out of their stomachs, almost as though they'd poured out, as though the snacks had overflowed from there. Candies and cookies, sodas and chocolates had poured out, stained with blood, and been scattered across the floor. What could have happened to cause this? It was almost as if their stomachs were being stuffed full with sweets. And it all poured out when their stomachs split open. Rose remembered a certain shocking meal, a turkey that had been served at her own birthday. When it had been cut open with a knife, out of it poured one of her favourite foods. But she hadn't been told what was inside the deep red ketchup omelette rice poured out like bloody maggots. Pulsing, dripping, slimy, pulpy, squelching. Trauma of her youth was revived. Rosa felt a monster raging inside her stomach as the acid started to rise. Unable to hold herself back, she threw up all over the floor. Her empty stomach had nothing but stomach acid. The scene in front of her was no fun Halloween party now. The three couples were enshrined right there, their stomachs vertically wrenched open. Wrenched open in a... with a... bar? So many snacks had been stuffed in there. Pulpy, squishy. Blood and guts and sweets were flowing onto the floor. Blood-stained, sticky, sloppy, pulpy. Sweet snacks had been made your fingers stick together. Gummy, but stained with entrails. Sloppy, pulpy. What was I... did I stepped on just now? I didn't feel like a candy or cookie or soda or chocolate. I'm scared. What did I step on? I can't even look at the bottom of my foot. Screaming that sound. What a gruesome Halloween party. From far away it looked truly beautiful, fantastical and fun. But from up close it was horrible, disgusting, yet somehow still beautiful. I wouldn't describe this as still beautiful. What the fuck, Rosa? Rosa's wild thoughts tried as best as they could to escape her throat with a loud voice. It was neither a scream nor a roar.
旦那様。
こんなのってひどいひどい。
救急車。
Know that you're an idiot.
警察。
そうよ。警察。
If a word so tied to reality hadn't come out of Goda's mouth, Rosa and the rest might have found themselves unable to escape that nightmarish party even now. But it wasn't because they thought the police might be able to do something. If they didn't keep yelling about the police, it felt as though another seat might be set up at the demon's party and given to them. Their own chests felt like they were expanding unpleasantly from the inside, rumbling, churning, and it was surely because the candy was about to overflow from their stomachs. Rosa, again tortured by desire to vomit, threw her stomach acid up on the floor, and then she searched to see if there was any candy in it. Rosa coughed violently again, forcibly spitting out the stomach acid been burning in her throat. She realized that by now her whole body had been covered in a filthy sweat.
源氏さんとシャナンちゃんはお父様に連絡して指示を仰いでちょうだい。郷田さんはカノン君と一緒に行って警察に電話を。あと南條先生に来てもらっ。
Why even bring Dr. Nancho here? It's a bit too late for medical care. The servants accepted their orders and dashed outside. After watching them leave, Rosa once again stared at her siblings with whom she'd spent a good times and bad and their partners. But there could be nothing more tragic than this scene. For some reason she was tempted to describe these fantastical deaths as beautiful. Rosa, why are you insistent on it's beautiful? You did... I said you did it slightly as a joke. But... did you really do it?
いねえな。どこに行っちまったんだろうな。
使用人室も厨房も空っぽだぜ。一体どうしちまったってんだ。
That's weird. Mario was like really chill when her mother died last time. Why does she really care about her this time? I stand corrected.
"弱ったね。バトラ君、本当にローザおばさんだったのかい?"
まあ俺も寝ぼけてたから自信はねえんだが、明け方にローザおばさんが入ってきてマリアの手提げカバンを漁ってるような気がしたんだよ。俺はてっきりマリアの手提げに歯磨きのチューブでも入ってるんじゃないかなんて思って寝ぼけてて。
なんで歯磨きのチューブがマリアの手提げに入ってるんだよ。
Why wouldn't there be a tube of toothpaste in Mario's handbag?
寝ぼけて夢でも見たに決まってんぜ。
Badler vaguely remembered Rosa entering Cousin's room. Also, when Mario woke up, before the rest of them, she'd started rampaging around, saying that someone had opened the envelope she'd been keeping safe. Putting two and two together, they figured that Rosa would probably come and open the envelope.
黄金の魔女様の封筒か。中に何が入ってたんだろ
う。わからないね。
Hang on a second. The guest specifically mentioned that Kraus and other people, they couldn't be found. However, Beatrice has the highest ranking in this house besides Kinzo. So why didn't they go and check on Beatrice? Also, where is Beatrice?
でも、あの封筒はおじい様が新書に使う後ろ宮家の家紋の入ったものだった。親族会議と無関係なものが入っていたとは考えがたいね。
How do you know this, George? She hadn't let anyone touch it, but yesterday Mario had shown the envelope to Battler and the rest a whole lot. That's how you know that. They remembered it well.
.ジョージの兄貴の言う通りなら相当重要なものらしいが、しかしそんな大事なものはどうして魔女様はマリアに渡したんだろうな。さっぱりだぜ。
Every once in a while, the refreshing morning atmosphere was completely wiped by the sound of thunder. It was only natural. Since the moment they'd woken up, they hadn't met anyone else. They felt as though the only one left, as if the mansion had become an empty husk.
おーい、誰かいないか。返事してくれよ。
Jessica called out in the hallway, and eventually an answer came back. It came from the entrance hall.
聞こえますとも。何かありましたか？
南條先生だ。よかった。この島から僕たち以外が消えてしまったわけではないようだよ。
南條先生、おはようございます。すみませんが、うちの親たちとかどこに行ったか知りませんか？
はて、私も今起きてこちらに来たばかりですからな。わかりかねますが、さて。
It was only natural. Nanjo was a guest like the rest of them. He'd come out to pass the time in the parlour until breakfast. causes of death. Okay, so they are all dead, because you can't really fake the bodies with a head still on. Maria buried her face in Nanjo's plump stomach, sobbing and crying. Nanjo could do nothing but be bewildered by this ruckus so early in the morning.
誰かかけてくるぜ。ジェシカ、誰か来るぞ。
From down in the hall, they could sense people running hurriedly. They saw Goda and Canon coming towards them. Normally it would be disgraceful for servants to run inside the mansion, and yet Batham and Bessie didn't even think to question that now. Maria's sobbing had become so unmanageable that they wanted to ask anyone where Rosa was. The two servants seemed to have bigger things in their mind than Francesca, who was waving at them. Goda flew into the servants' room and Canon noticed that Nanjo was there. He bowed and approached the doctor at a quick pace before whispering something into his ear.
何ですってローザさんが。
はい、ご案内いたしますので、どうかご同行お願いいたします。
わかりました。
こちらへ。
Without saying anything more than that, Canon finally noticed Jessica and bowed to her. But he wasn't calm. He dashed back to the corridor which he'd come, followed by Nanjo. Looking at how hurriedly they were, Battler and Vess realized that, yes, something bad had really happened. They saw Goda through the door in the servants' room which had been flung open. He was holding a receiver and violently pressing the hook. From that they realized he was trying to call the hospital or the police. In any event, he was trying to call someone because a serious emergency had occurred.
行ってみようぜ。
Is the key literal? If it got by 6 chosen by the key of sacrifices, are they literally meaning a key? Are they that specific about this? We didn't know what, but something was happening. Batham and Vess had chased after Nanjo and Kinzo, whoever. Canon and Nanjo. And then we realized Canon had called Dr. Nanjo, but he hadn't called us. So we shouldn't have gone with them. I wondered if Alice regretted her excess curiosity when she chased the rabbit holding a clock. That is a visceral scream. Okay, brilliant job from a voice actor.
母さん、父さん、何があったの？
What do you think happened, George?
なんだよこりゃ。趣味が悪いにも程があるじゃねえかよ。命を奪うならそれで十分事足りただろうがよ。なんだよこりゃ。わざわざ殺した後に椅子に座らせて腹裂いて、菓子をわざわざ中に詰め込んだってのかよ。なんだってなんだってそんな悪趣味なことをしやがるんだよ。チキショウやってくれやがるぜ。最高だよ最高だよ。
皆さんは外へ出られた方がいい。こんな姿を皆さんに見せたいなどと彼らが思うわけがありません。
Nanyo had told Chill to go outside, but no one listened.
ローザさん、皆さんに言ってください。こんなもの見続けては毒になる。
Rose regretted her own carelessness. She should have realized the children would eventually come here. She should have quickly locked up inside instead of standing around stunned. So the children had come here. They had seen it. Surely at this very moment they were having a sight burned into their eyes. It was far more grotesque and shocking than the shocking meal Rose had witnessed in her youth. While she hugged Maria, who had seemed to be too shocked to show any emotion at this gruesome scene, Rosa cried for them and their parents. Before groaning and crying voices, their sadness continued to echo in the place that should have known God's love.
クソ野郎がまたかよ。またこんな殺人を。しかも今度もやたらと凝った最高にふざけた殺し方をしやがって。
わらわはそんな嘆きより感謝の言葉が聞きたかったぞ。
感謝と言ったがこのクソババア。てめえ耳がいかれてやがるってんなら俺が両の耳を引き裂いてよく聞こえるようにしてやるぜ。なんで俺がこの最高にいかれた殺し方にありがとうございますベアトリーチェ様なんて言わなければならねえんだ。ぶっ殺してやる。
前回のゲームでお前は自分の親の死に顔が見られないと嘆いたな。だから残したぞ。
What the fuck is that expression?
しっかり残した。よく拝んでおけ。間違いなく父親たちが殺されたことを。
Notice how she said that in bold.
そうかよ。そいつはサービス満点だぜ。気に入った。
I thought I'd plow your face after I choked life out of you, but I'll take that back now. I'll rip your guts out instead.
感情に任せて思考を止めるな。すでにわらわのゲームは始まっておるのだぞ。わらわは今回は綺麗に死体を残すことに決めた。なぜだかわかるか。前回のゲームでそなたがわらわの存在を否定するとき、こう考えて否定したであろう。顔面が潰され遺体の身元が確認できない。だから身代わりの死体を用意してアリバイを作った可能性が否定できない。その可能性が排除できない限り人間犯人説は維持できる。
なんだと。
さあバトラ、南條に検視を任せてよいのか。ミステリーの古典では検視の医者がグルというのが伝統なのだろう。なら南條に検視を任せるな。そなたが自らするがよい。
Stop shooting down all of my ideas, Beatrice.
間違いなく6人の死体が当人で死んだふりなどでなく本当に死んでいることを十分に確認するがいい。
I mean, this kill is just going to make the rest of the logic a lot harder, because honestly, the door had a latch is the easiest solution to this one ever.
お前の父親が母親が腹を裂かれて臓物を引きずり出されて殺されていることを腹に手を入れてその手触りで確認するがいい。
Shut up, Beatrice.
泣かねえ。ちくしょうちくしょう、泣かねえぞ俺は。
But why is that line so funny? This is a very serious moment. It's no laughing matter. What the fuck is Mario doing at this time? His tears were still dripping down as though scolding him for being a sissy, he slapped his face hard several times with both hands. Even so, the tears wouldn't stop. However, he felt a hot blaze in both his eyes.
これだけの上等を決めやがった野郎に借りはがっちり返させていただくぜ。なら泣く時じゃねえ、自分のすべきことを考えろ。ああ、ダメだぜ、全然ダメだ。涙を流す暇があったら考えろ。涙腺なんかひるませる時じゃねえ。
Rather than genuine anger, maybe it was more of an evasive anger to blot out his sadness. However, it gave little courage to George and Jessica, who'd been crushed by the sadness.
そうだね。僕たちが泣いても起こってしまった現実は変わらない。
じゃあどうすりゃいいんだ。私は父さんと母さんのために何をすればいいんだよ。
ローザ様、戻りました。
郷田さん、警察はどうでしたか。対応の指示はいつ頃来られそうだと言っていましたか。
それが電話が故障のようでして、非常用の無線機も試してはみたのですが、その天候のせいでしょうか、こちらも通じず。
なんですって。じゃあ警察に連絡がつかないということなの。あいつだ。あいつが電話線とかに細工して警察に電話ができないようにしたんだ。
When she heard the sound of the phones had been broken down, Jessica immediately decided that this was work of that mysterious guest. Her eyes were bright red after so much crying, and they began to grow even redder with rage.
もう議論の余地なんかねえぜ。全てが分かってる。そうだと分かる。父さんと母さんを殺したのは誰だ。決まってるぜ。あいつだ。昨日来たとかいう魔女様に決まってる。襟首ひねり上げてやるぜ。チクショーチクショーチクショー。ジェシカちゃん、お待ちなさい。郷田さん、カノ君、行って。
はい。お嬢様、お待ちを。
Covering her uncontrollable sadness with anger, Jessica ran outside, torn apart by emotion. Thinking about it hastily may be the mystery guest who'd arrived yesterday. Beatrice was suspicious. However, in that instance, there was absolutely no proof that she was the culprit. At this moment, she was just another guest, no more, no less. So, Rosa, making an adult decision, was forced to stop Jessica in her rash rampage. Golden and Cannon picked up on this immediately and chased after her.
誰にも招かれなかった客人、ベアトリーチェが犯人なんだろうか。
Yes, but also no.
ジェシカの気持ちもわかる。そう思い込みたい気持ちは俺にもある。誰でもいいから犯人ってことにして横っ面をぶっ飛ばしてやりたい気持ちがある。だがその前にはっきりと理解する必要がある。ベアトリーチェってのは何者なんだ。俺は顔すら見てねえぜ。
Shut the fuck up,
顔な
Mario.
らお屋敷に大きな肖像画で飾られてたよ。あれだけ見てまだ覚えられないのかな。
なんだよマリア、こんな状況で何がおかしいよ。
I can't answer that question.
ベアトリーチェは魔女なんだよ。そして黄金鏡の扉を開くための儀式がいよいよ始まったの。この6人はその生贄なんだよ。さあさあ始まるよ、魔女の宴が。
Okay. I had a thought. So, we need enough candy in order to make this happen. I don't think it's possible for the guests to be able to arrive storing that much candy without anyone noticing. But it's more feasible if people who were already on the island were able to slowly gather up and store it over time, probably in the chapel itself, as nobody really entered there. So, one of our culprits has to be someone who stays on the island. And also Rudolph. I'm not gonna say that it's the same people between each event, because that might bog it down. We can have different culprits between each loop. So one of the people who are on the island has to be the culprit. And probably someone pretty wealthy, so that probably knocks off Shannon and Canon. So Goda, Genji, Kenzo, Kraus, Natsui, and Jessica.
今宵はハロウィン。魔女たちが今こそ祝い集う。
マリア、その気持ち悪い声で笑うのをやめなさいっていつも言ってるでしょ。
The crisp sound of Rosa slapping Maria's cheek echoed through the high-ceilinged chapel. Now is not the time for child abuse. Ever since it started raining yesterday, ever since this island was swallowed by the typhoon, I felt that something was wrong. It was bright and sunny when I arrived from Rokujima, but since I'd gotten up so early and was sleepy, I took a nap. When I woke up, it had already started raining, and ever since that time, suddenly a mysterious visitor calling herself the Golden Witch Beatrice has arrived, and I felt like I was sinking bit by bit into a bizarre world. What the heck is happening while I was napping? Am I supposed to believe that this island was sealed off from inside a different world, where common sense doesn't apply? Who is this person called Beatrice? Is some unknown person trying to involve themselves in the inheritance problem just like our parents were freaking out about for dinner last night? Or is the culprit the witch from the Golden Legend, just like Maria said? Even if we set Jessica's temper aside, given the circumstances, it's probably safe that this visitor is someone most suspicious. But we mustn't make up our minds on that matter alone. It's useless, it's all useless. I smacked my face with both hands again, cording off my brains before they overloaded. Even though it might have been a wasted effort.
これはおじい様の封筒。
Oh, but the third one is there. On a trail piled up with sweets with decorated table, George found a western envelope that had the Ushimai crest down with a gold leaf. And it was unopened.
ってことは、それは俺たち宛てってことじゃねえのか。親父たちが読んだものだったなら開封されてるはずだぜ。
その推理は正解のようだよ。書いてある。残されし者たちへって書いてあるよ。
それは犯人が残した手紙なの。中身。
兄貴、開けようぜ。
After nodding silently, George broke the seal. A folded letter came out.
読むよ。六軒島へようこそ。後ろ宮家の皆様方。私は金蔵様にお仕えしております。当家顧問錬金術師のベアトリーチェと申します。
Letter really was a joke. This Beatrice, who called herself the family alchemist, had announced that she was collecting the gold she lent grandfather along with the interest. Wait, is this the same letter as the one they gave to Mario in the first round? So did Rosa never open hers and this is that letter again? And if it's not, what was in Rosa's letter? And that interest was everything grandfather had created. Since it was tragedy right before his eyes, as the paragraph was being read out loud, it clearly wasn't just referring to the wealth that grandfather had built up. It was literal. Everything that grandfather had created. In other words, all the grandfather's descendants were included in the interest.
ふざけやがってなんてめちゃくちゃな契約だ。黄金の利子は命だってのかよ。そんなのまるで悪魔の契約じゃねえかよ。それで魔女気取りってわけか。笑わせやがるぜ。
特別条項。ただし隠された契約の黄金を暴いた者が現れた時、ベアトリーチェはこの権利を全て永遠に放棄しなければならない。黄金の隠し場所についてはすでに金蔵様が私の肖像画の下に碑文にて公示されております。つまりこういうことだね。
Okay, I know I'm going a lot into the notes, but, blah, 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 blah. If we take the key as being a literal key, then I'd like to assume that Rosa is our person considered to be the key. So Rosa is whoever gets gifted the saddle, whatever. I don't know enough about this episode because I can't be bothered to solve this for a while. Because the last page is pointless. This is just the order of killing people, and this bit they went over in the first loop, and I'm too stupid to solve it or remember it.
もしこの殺人が利子の回収行為だというなら、それを止める条件としておじい様に与えた隠し黄金を探し出してみろと。そしてその秘密は例の肖像画の碑文に隠されているとも言ってる。
つまりこいつは魔女様の挑戦状ってわけか。黄金の隠し場所を記した暗号文を解けるものなら解いてみろと。そしてそれができなきゃ利子の回収をこの後も着々と進めていきますと。そう言ってぶっ殺してやる。上等だ。
バトラ君、これ
The table was covered with sweets, so even though those things were right out of the open, they just assumed they were sweets too. I mean, come on, you see him a lot, right? You know, those boxes of chocolate shaped like gold ingots?
こりゃお菓子の箱じゃねえぞ。
Do these exist? I've not even heard of anything that looks like that.
本物だ。こりゃ本物の金塊だ。
片翼のわしの紋章が刻印されてる。前に母さんが話してたのを聞いた。これはおじい様の黄金伝説の金塊だよ。
Gold ingots weighing a full 10 kilograms, a whole 3 of them were piled in the very center of the table. It was where a cake would be placed if it was a birthday party. In other words, this was without doubt the birthday cake for a party known as a family conference.
これが本当に純度49のインゴットだったなら、6000万円くらいの価値はある。
Is this really necessary?
バカ野郎。安すぎる。俺たちの親が6人も殺されて、そこに積まれた黄金がたったの6000万円だと。
バカにするんじゃね
さあ始まったね、ベアトリーチェ。どうせこの謎は誰にも解けないよ。だから絶対にベアとの勝ち。早く黄金鏡への扉を開いて。
That's an odd line. If a riddle is supposed to be solvable and solvable enough to create a large enough risk to make actual magic, why would it be considered to be impossible in the first place? It's supposed to be doable enough to where there's a large risk. And I think the reason why it's impossible, they just don't do it, is because they're preoccupied with the whole murder thing, which is part of a riddle for something.
そしてマリアを連れてって。